Chapter 1. The Client. The Alpha King of Coldbrook had 9 territories, 30,000 wolves, an army, and absolute authority over everything that happened under his roof, and he was sitting alone in his study at the 2nd hour of the morning, trying to fold a napkin. He was not good at it. He had been at it, by the evidence on the desk, for a while. "Alpha King," said Imogen Pruitt from the doorway. He did not startle. He set the linen down with enormous dignity, as though stopping had been his idea. "You are early." "I am on time. You are awake at 2 a.m, committing violence against a napkin." The fold was presumptuous. "It is a rectangle." "It is a rectangle with aspirations." Imogen Pruitt had run 411 weddings across 6 territories and believed herself immune to clients, and she felt something crack very slightly in her professional composure and had the sense not to look at it. He stood and kept standing for a while. There was a great deal of him. 6.5 feet, heavy through the shoulders, black hair cropped short and going early silver at the temples, a slate blue gaze that did not blink at convenient intervals. 37 and built like a thing you would not put a door in front of. "The clipboard is loud," said Bracken. Warwick did not answer his wolf. He rarely did in front of anyone. It showed on the face, and everything showed on his face lately, which was a problem he had not solved. "You come recommended," he said. "I am the best in the north, and I am expensive." "You are hired." He came round the desk. "My sister bonds in 14 days. 300 guests, 5 territories, a feast, a hall. I want it flawless. I want it to look like the whole of Coldbrook is glad." "That is a strange way to describe a wedding." "It is a strange wedding," said Warwick. He stopped in front of her. Imogen was 5'5" in boots, and had once stared down a drunk uncle holding a ceremonial sword. And she looked up and waited, because the useful part of any brief is the part the client has to work up to. "I do not like the wolf she has chosen," he said. "Most brothers do not." "I am not most brothers. Nothing happens in this territory that I do not permit." He said it without emphasis, which was what made it land. "If I wished, this bonding would not occur. 4 words in the Great Hall tomorrow, and no wolf in 5 territories would attend it. Emmett Crane would take a post in the Eastern Holdings inside a month, and he would go and thank me and mean it." "And you are not going to?" "No." "Why not?" Warwick was quiet for a moment. "Because I have already tried," said Warwick. Imogen shut her mouth. 4 times. March, when they were a fortnight engaged, and I asked her whether she was certain, and she laughed and said I would say that about anybody. June, when I asked whether she still wanted the things she wanted at 19, and she said everybody wants different things at 26 and went to fetch the wine. He counted them on the desk with 1 finger, the way a man counts something he has counted before. August, I sat down with her properly and said she could stop, any of it, at any hour, and she told me I was being strange. And a month ago, I got as far as the start of a sentence about him, and she left the room, and we did not speak for 9 days. "And the 4th time taught you something?" "That she is not uncertain," said Warwick. "That is what nobody understands about this. She is not a frightened girl being carried along. She is the most determined wolf in this territory, and she has decided, and every time I put a hand near it, she sets harder. I have watched her set 4 times, a 5th, and she marries him on the 9th to prove a point, and never comes home." He stopped counting. "So I have run out. That is what you are looking at. A wolf with 9 territories and 30,000 swords who has run out." Imogen took her writing board out from under her arm. "You could still stop it," she said. "You could stop it tonight." "I could stop the wedding. I cannot make her forgive me for it." He looked at her. "I can do anything, Pruitt. That is the one thing I cannot do." "What is the feeling in your chest?" she said. "I do not know." "Try." He makes her smaller. He said it and then looked away, which she had not expected from him. "It sounds like nothing. It sounds like a jealous brother." It sounds, out loud, in a room, exactly like a man who does not want to give his sister away, which is also true, which is the difficulty. His hand had closed on the back of the chair. So I am paying you a great deal of money to make this wedding beautiful. If I am wrong, she deserves the best day of her life. And if I am right, then in a year, when she needs somewhere to come back to, I do not want the last thing she remembers of me to be that I ruined it. The fire moved in the grate. Imogen wrote nothing down. This was unusual, and she noticed it happening. Alpha King. I am going to be direct with you once, and then I will be professional for a fortnight. Go on. That is the most decent thing I have ever heard a client say, and I have been doing this 12 years. She clipped her pencil to the board. It is also going to be completely useless to you, because you will not manage it. You have been up since the second hour attacking a napkin, said Imogen. You do not have a plan, Alpha King. You have a leak. I like the clipboard, said Bracken. You have said 4 words to me in 2 years, and 3 of them were no. I stand by the no. Separately, I like the clipboard. They gave her the small east room above the kitchens, which was warm and had a chest under the window, and she put her bag on the chest and did not open it, because she never did. 12 years, 6 territories. There is no point unpacking a bag you are going to need in a fortnight. She met the bride at the 9th hour, and the groom at the 9th hour and 4 minutes. And inside 2 minutes of conversation, she had written 1 line on her board and turned the board face down. Sybil Bramhall was 26, dark-haired, sharp-boned, and quick, with her brother's stillness in a smaller frame, and none of his patience. She came into the glass house at a stride, said, "You are the one he hired, thank the moon," and shook Imogen's hand with a grip that had done work. "Cream or white," Imogen said. "What lilies, traditional. Every Coldbrook bonding for 200 years. And what do you want?" Sybil opened her mouth. "She's not fussy," said Emmett Crane, arriving behind her with 2 cups. "Best thing about her. Whatever's traditional. Honestly, love, don't make the woman's life difficult." Emmett Crane was 29, broad, sandy, easy, with the warmest smile Imogen had seen on a wolf in a decade. He put a cup into Sybil's hand without asking whether she wanted it. Sybil took it because it was in her hand. "White lilies, then," Sybil said. "White lilies," Imogen agreed. She had written, "He answered." 4 separate wolves told her that day, unprompted, that Sybil had done well for herself. Done well for herself went into her board twice, in 2 different hands, and she underlined it the second time. At the 6th hour, in the courtyard, she asked Sybil what she did with herself. "Oh," said Sybil, "nothing much these days." "She's been busy with me," said Emmett from the gate, fondly, and Sybil laughed, and it was a real laugh, and Imogen wrote, "Nothing much these days," and drew a small square box around it. "Note," said Sorrel. "Yes." "I have no theory," said Imogen's wolf. "I am only saying the young one does not smell like a wolf who runs." She found the king in the great hall at dusk, standing on the low oak platform where the bonding would take place, testing it by standing on it. "It is 40 years old," Imogen said. "It held 109 wolves at the harvest feast. I am assessing the structure." "You have been assessing it for 30 minutes." She came up the steps and stood beside him, which put the top of her head near his collarbone, and did nothing for either of their positions. Close to, his scent came off the wool of his coat. Cedar smoke, banked, dry. A fire that has been out for hours in a room that still remembers it. She catalogued it against her will. She catalogued everything. It was the least useful of her professional habits, and by a distance the loudest. "Ask me," Warwick said. "Give me one specific thing, not a feeling. One fact I can hold." He was silent long enough that she thought he would refuse. "She has not run with the hunt in 2 years," he said. Imogen turned her head. Before that she ran every hunt in this territory from the age of 15, and she was the fastest wolf in 5 holdings. There are 3 tallies on my study wall with her name at the top of all of them. 11 years old, and I have never taken them down." His voice had dropped half an octave, and she watched the wolf come up under a king's skin, the shoulders lowering a fraction, the weight shifting forward, the slate blue gaze flaring bright amber for the length of one breath and going out. 2 years. Nobody has asked her why, including me. Imogen thought about a woman who had said whatever's traditional about her own wedding flowers. "I do not read love," she said. "Love is not readable, and I have stopped trying. I read the size of the room a person is standing in. And? Ask me at the end of the fortnight." She stepped down off the platform, misjudged the last step in the dark, and his arm came out and caught her at the elbow before she had finished falling. He let go at once. She felt the warmth of it for most of an hour and did not write that down at all. Chapter 2. The Leak. He canceled the flowers on Monday. Mrs. Wick had grown Coldbrook's bonding flowers for 22 years and had never wept about it until that morning, when she wept into a bucket of white lilies while Imogen held her elbow. 3rd time he had canceled. 400 stems cut. Imogen went to the study. "You canceled the flowers. White lilies are funeral flowers. White lilies are the traditional bonding flower in Coldbrook. 200 years. Your sister chose them without hesitating." She had the argument loaded, chapter and verse. Warwick was at the window with his back to her. "They remind me of funerals," he said. Imogen stopped and did the arithmetic she should have done on the first day. 20 years ago. He had been 17. Sybil had been 6. Somebody had put white lilies on that. "Cream roses," she said. He turned. "Traditional in 3 of the neighboring holdings," she went on, briskly, because brisk was the only tool in the box that would not break in her hand. "They hold better in a cold hall. Mrs. Wick can source them by Thursday, and she will complain about it for the rest of her natural life, which will give her enormous pleasure." He did not thank her. She did not want him to. If he had, they would both have had to acknowledge what had happened in that room, and neither of them was equipped. "Cream roses are acceptable," he said. She left before her expression could do anything. "Note," said Sorrel on the stairs, "that was not about lilies." "I know. I have no theory." He redrew the seating chart on Tuesday. She had built it from nothing. 300 names, 11 tables, the groom's widowed mother at table 2 where a widow belongs. He redrew it overnight and put himself behind a pillar. She redrew it back. He redrew it again, and this time removed himself from the hall altogether, into a marginal note reading, "The Alpha King will observe from the gallery." She redrew it back and taped a second sheet beside it in letters 2 inches high. "Touch this chart and I will use your ceremonial sword as a bread knife." The chart held. The note stayed on the wall for the rest of the fortnight. He showed it to his beta. Twice. He objected to the arch on Wednesday, and this was the one she got wrong. "Not the east end, move it west." "Give me a reason." "I do not have one," said Warwick. "Move it west." She did not move it. She ran the walkthrough on Thursday at the 9th hour, which is when the ceremony would fall, and the 9th hour sun in the 9th month came in low over the eastern wall and turned that end of the hall into a white sheet of light in which it was not possible to see a face. She moved the arch west. 9 wolves, 4 hours, a rebuilt seating chart. Warwick came in, looked at it, said, "The trestles came, good," and went out again, which was worse than anything he could have said. He rejected the menu on Thursday, and this one was honest, which made it worse. "Not the pheasant." "It is the groom's favorite." "I am aware." "Then you will have it at table 2 and you will eat it, because 300 wolves will be watching you decide how you feel about this wedding, and the first thing they will read is your plate." "No," said the Alpha King of Coldbrook. And that was the end of it. It was the first time in 9 days he had used the voice, and he used it quietly, and Imogen discovered the thing she had managed not to think about all week, which was that this man could simply decide. There was no chart to redraw. There was nobody to appeal to. There was a kitchen with 4 dressed birds in it, and a wolf who owned the kitchen. They tasted the alternative that evening, with the ovens roaring and 9 members of staff pretending not to listen. Warwick chewed for some time, swallowed, and set the fork down with great care. "This tastes like compromise," he said. Imogen laughed. It came out of her before she could get a hand in front of it, loud and undignified and audible to the entire kitchen, and she was furious about it, because she had lost, and she was standing there laughing at the wolf who had beaten her. Warwick did not laugh. He looked at her the way a man looks at a coin he has found in a coat he has not worn for years, and went back to the venison and said nothing at all. And Imogen understood with a sinking professional certainty that the information had been filed. She went and told the cook herself, because she was the one who had promised him otherwise. And the cook was gracious about it, which was worse. "He beat us," said Sorel. "I have no theory. I note only that we are enjoying this, and I cannot account for it." He objected to the shape of the napkins, on the grounds that the fold was presumptuous, in front of a linen merchant who afterwards had to be given brandy. He objected to the quartet on the grounds that the second violin was flat. The second violin was not flat. The second violin was 11 bars into a slow air about 2 people finding each other on a road, and the Alpha King of Coldbrook had gone the color of old parchment. "I am not opposed to romance," he said in the corridor. "I am opposed to a cello communicating romance about my sister." "The cello does not know your sister. The cello is suggestive." She laughed, which was twice in 2 days and an all-time record for a working fortnight, and went back inside and instituted the rule. The rule was 1 sheet of paper delivered to the study at the 8th hour on Friday morning, and it read, "The Alpha King may lodge 1 objection per day. It shall be in writing. It shall reach the ceremony mistress before noon. It shall not be spoken aloud in front of the bride, the groom's family, the staff, the musicians, the florist, or any wolf capable of repeating it. It will be read. It will be considered. It will almost certainly be denied. 1 per day." Marsden the Beta, who had endured 3 months of his sovereign objecting to linen, read it twice and went outside. Warwick lodged the first within the hour. "I object to the height of the ceremonial arch. It is theatrical." Day 2. "I object to the arrangement of the candles, which suggests a path, which suggests a departure." Day 3. "No objection today. This has been difficult. Please note the effort." Day 4. "I object to the ribbon. There is no ribbon. I object to its absence." She kept every one, clipped under the brass bar of her board with the delivery schedules and the linen invoices, and did not examine why, and carried them everywhere. She found him in the study on Friday night, among 4 seating charts, her bread knife note, and a plate of venison nobody had eaten, sleeves pushed up, coat over the chair. "Pruitt, I have spent 5 days losing arguments to you about flowers, chairs, meat, music, and linen. I have been outmaneuvered by a woman with a board and a threat concerning my sword." He paused. "I am beginning to enjoy the process." "Do not enjoy the process. The process is me doing my job." "Your job appears to involve defeating me daily." "That is a side effect." "I find it novel," said Warwick, and he smiled. Not the receiving line smile, not the arrangement of the mouth he wore in the great hall. A small, real, surprised by itself thing that arrived at the corner and spread before he could stop it, and took 10 years off him. "Oh," said Sorrel. Imogen's wolf had been quiet all week. She liked the arguments and the ovens and the way the great hall echoed, and she had not been paying romantic attention to anything at all. And then she made a sound in the middle of Imogen's chest, like a low-struck string. one note, entirely unasked for. "Good night, Alpha King," said Imogen, and left at a speed that could not honestly be called walking. "Note," said Searle, on the stairs. We hummed. We did not. "I have no theory," said Searle, but we hummed. Chapter 3. 2 Years. The second week should have been quieter. She had won the arguments. There was nothing left to fight about. Instead, the Alpha King of Coldbrook began appearing. Monday, the Glass House, on the grounds of quality control. He approved 60 arrangements of cream roses without objection and stayed an hour. Tuesday, the kitchen, on the grounds of dietary oversight. He carried 4 sample trays to the Great Hall himself, which is not a thing kings do. On Tuesday night, he ran out of reasons. She knew because she heard him coming at the 11th hour along the upper corridor, and the sound was not the sound of a man walking. It was the sound of a man carrying furniture. The Alpha King of Coldbrook arrived in the doorway of the small east room carrying a chair. He was holding it by the back with one hand at his side, the way you might hold a coat. Imogen looked up from 406 items. "That is a chair," she said. "It is. Is there a fault with it?" "No." He set it down in her doorway, squarely, and did not sit in it. "My beta has begun leaving chairs in rooms he thinks I am going to be standing in. 4 this week. I am aware of what he is doing, and he is aware that I am aware, and neither of us has mentioned it, so I have brought one myself, and I want it minuted that I did it on purpose." "What is the objection, Alpha King?" "There is no objection. I lodged it before noon. It concerned a ribbon." "Then what are you doing in my doorway at the 11th hour with a chair?" Warwick Bramhall stood in the doorway with a whole kingdom asleep behind him, and did not have an answer, and both of them watched him not have one for about 4 seconds. "Good night, Pruitt," he said. He went. He left the chair. She sat down in it after the 12th hour, having done no further work, and stayed there a while, and wrote nothing down about it whatsoever. "Note," said Searle. "Do not. I am only observing that we are sitting in it." On Wednesday he assessed the platform, which he had assessed on the first evening, for 40 minutes. Imogen directed the setting of 11 tables from the floor and looked up twice. Both times he was not looking at the platform. "He is standing on the wood again," said Searle. "It is an assessment." "I have no theory," said Searle, "but the wood is fine." The keep had noticed. Marsden was keeping a tally of disputes won. Pruitt 14, Bramhall 2, both of the king's wins overturned on appeal. And the kitchen had begun leaving a second plate wherever Imogen worked, because the Alpha King would arrive to inspect something and require feeding. On Wednesday afternoon he took her writing board out of her arms, turned it flat and held it steady at the right height so that she could write properly, and then stood there, holding a ceremony mistress's board, for 11 minutes, in front of 40 members of staff, an Alpha King serving as furniture in his own hall. Imogen wrote 3 lines of a perfectly legible delivery schedule, and could not afterwards have said what any of them contained. "You are warm," she said. "I am aware." That was not a comment. That was a report. "I understood it as a report," said Warwick, and did not move, and did not stop holding the board. "His heart did a thing," said Sorel. "I have no theory. I am building a file." She got out of the hall at the 6th hour, and was 3 steps into the corridor when she heard him behind her, and turned, and he caught her wrist. It was the first thing he had ever done to her without a reason attached. The cedar smoke came off his sleeve, no longer banked at all, and she felt the whole length of her arm register it, and the pulse under his thumb was not hers. She watched a man who commanded 9 territories fail completely to command 1 sentence, and stood in a cold corridor and let him fail, because she was suddenly unwilling to help. "Pruitt," he said. "Yes." Whatever came next got as far as his throat and stalled. And 6 inches away, Warwick Bramhall saw the hazel of her gaze flare pale gold and go out again, and understood exactly what it meant, because he had lived his whole life among wolves. "The bonding is in 5 days," he said. He let go. 4 seconds. She could still feel exactly where his thumb had been at the 9th hour that night, lying in the dark in a cold room, and she did not write that down either. She went down to the great kitchen at the 2nd hour of the morning because the ovens hold a room warm for hours after the fires go down, and there is cold food on the tasting trays and nobody in the world to talk to. There was one wolf to talk to. He was on the end of the long scrubbed table in his shirt sleeves with a plate of the rejected pheasant. "You are in my kitchen," said Imogen. "It is my kitchen." "That is a technicality, and it is beneath you." She got a plate. "You rejected that bird." "I rejected it at a tasting, in front of 9 members of staff, on a matter of principle," said Warwick. "There is nobody here. Sit down." She sat down. They ate cold pheasant off a tasting tray for a while. It was the first time in 9 days neither of them had a wedding in front of them, and Imogen found she did not know what to do with her hands and put them round a cup. "Where do you go?" he said. "After. You run a hall of 300. The dancing starts. Then what?" "The ceremony mistress leaves?" "Through the front." "Through the side door by the pantry," said Imogen, "in the hour after the dancing begins." "Because that is the hour when nobody counts staff. Then the accounts with the household clerk and a horse in the morning." "How many of them have asked you to stay for the dancing?" "That is not the arrangement." That was not the question. Imogen put the cup down. "None of them," she said. She had not meant to say it, and it came out perfectly level, which was worse, and she watched him take it and turn it over and do the exact thing she had spent 12 years arranging that nobody would do. 411, he said. "Do not. 12 years, 6 territories. You keep a bag packed." He said it without emphasis, the way he said things he had noticed and put away. "It is on the chest in the east room, and it has not been opened since you arrived." "That is efficiency." "It is not." "Alpha King." "You told me you read the size of the room a person is standing in," said Warwick. "You spend the whole of every day making one for somebody else, and at the hour when it is finally warm and the music starts, you go out of the side door by the pantry and nobody counts you, and you have done it 411 times, and you have never once minded." Imogen sat there with her hands round a cold cup and could not think of one single thing to say. "There," he said. "That is the trick, is it? It is unpleasant." "It is extremely unpleasant." "Welcome to a fortnight in my company," said Warwick Bramhall, and Imogen Pruitt laughed until she had to put her hand flat on the table, and somewhere under her ribs her wolf sat down and refused to be moved on the subject ever again. "I have a theory," said Sorrel. "I am aware. Do you want it?" "No." She went looking for the fact on Thursday because a professional checks. She found it in the stable yard, in the rain, with a Western rider called Halloway who had ridden the circuit for 19 years and was delighted to talk to anybody about anything. "When did Sybil Bramhall last run with you?" 2 springs back." He said it easily, and then his expression changed while he said it, the way a man's does when he hears his own sentence for the first time. 2 springs, that's a while, isn't it? Did anyone ask her why she stopped? Halloway thought about it for slightly too long. "No," he said. Imogen stood in the rain and thought about how many of 411 brides she had watched go quiet across a fortnight, and how many times she had said anything about it. None. Not once. It had always been somebody else's business, and she was not certain, standing in that yard, that this was a thing to be proud of. She told him that night in the study with the door shut. She told him about Halloway. She told him about the cup put into Sybil's hand without anybody asking. She told him about the fitting, where Sybil had asked for long sleeves and been told twice, fondly, from a chair in the corner, that she was never cold. And about a woman standing on a stool with her arms out saying, to nobody, in an entirely ordinary voice, that she used to be quite loud. Warwick listened to the whole of it without moving. She had planned for fury and had a route to the door. What she got was worse. "Thank you," he said. Then he put one hand flat on the desk and leaned on it, and did not straighten up for some time. And Imogen watched a man discover that being right about a thing he has carried alone for 2 years is not a relief. 24 months, he said. I have walked around this keep for 24 months believing I was a stunted, jealous, overbearing man who could not let his sister grow up. My beta has been very kind to me about it. My own wolf refuses to discuss it. I do not refuse to discuss it, said Bracken. I said no. I have been saying no for 2 years. You wanted reasons. I do not have reasons. I have no. He has been enormously helpful. Imogen sat down on the arm of the chair, which was not a thing a ceremony mistress does in a king's study. Warwick, she said. It was the first time. It landed in the middle of the room and stayed there. I want you to hear me, and I want you to hate every word of it. She held his gaze. You have had 4. You do not get a 5th. You have just told me I am right. You are right, and you are out. Imogen did not soften it. March, June, August, a month ago. She has set 4 times. Say it a 5th, and she hears a brother who cannot let go, because that is what she has heard 4 times running, and she marries him on the 9th to settle the argument. The talking finished in August. You have been objecting to napkins ever since because you could not think what else to do with your hands. The fire moved. Then what am I for? He said. Afterwards, said Imogen, whichever afterwards it turns out to be. That is not nothing. That is most of what anybody is for. He was quiet a long moment. Where did you learn this? He said. And there it was, the question she had spent 12 years standing at the back of rooms in order never to be asked. Nowhere, said Imogen. The back wall, 411 of them. You see a great deal from the back wall, and nobody has ever once asked me what I saw. Warwick came round the desk. He did not touch her. He stopped a foot away, and the cedar smoke came warm off his coat, and Imogen's wolf made the low struck string sound again, and she did not bother telling her to stop. I am going to do it your way, he said. Good. I want it minuted that every part of me wishes to do it mine. The record has noted it, said Imogen, and picked up her board, and wrote nothing on it whatsoever. Chapter 4. The Supper. He nearly made it. That is the part Imogen would hold on to afterwards, in the gray days. He had 4 failures behind him, and every reason to try a 5th, and he did not. He held his tongue for the whole of the last week, at a cost she could see from 30 feet, and he was undone at the end by 4 seconds and a sandy-haired man being charming. The rehearsal supper was Saturday, 2 nights before the bonding. 60 guests. The household, the Cranes, the Western riders, the elders, the musicians eating in the corner with their instruments under the table. It went beautifully, for 2 hours and 11 minutes. Imogen worked it from the back wall and watched Warwick Bramhall swallow 4 separate provocations with an effort visible from 30 feet, and felt something in her chest she declined to identify. Sit down, said Bracken. I am sitting down. You are sitting the way a thing sits before it does not. Then Halloway, 3 cups in and entirely innocent, called down the table. Sybil, are you leading us out in the spring? Circuit's short of a lead, and you were the best we ever had. And Sybil Bramhall looked up. Imogen saw the whole of it, because everybody at the back wall sees everything. She watched a woman's face open. She watched 26 years of somebody arrive all at once, the grin, the lift, the shoulders coming back, and she watched Sybil Bramhall say out loud in front of 60 wolves, for the first time in 2 years, Yes, Moon, yes. Give me the spring meat, I'll... Emmett Crane laughed. It was a warm laugh. It was fond. He put his hand over hers on the table and said easily to Holloway, in the tone of a man saving everybody some trouble, "Ah, she's not doing that. Sib's never been much of a runner." And then he turned back to his own conversation. The hall did not stop. Nobody noticed. 2 wolves laughed politely and the plates went on moving. Sybil sat with her sentence half out of her mouth and her hand under his and looked at the tablecloth. And Imogen Pruitt, 30 feet away at the back wall, watched a bride understand something in real time with no help from anybody and thought, "There, she has it. She has it herself." "No," said Bracken. "You have said no for 2 years. I meant it every time, and I mean it now. Not here. Not like this. Sit." Warwick Bramhall stood up. She was the fastest wolf in 5 holdings. It was not loud. It did not need to be. 60 wolves went silent in the time a candle takes to gutter. She took the Western Circuit at 19. There are 3 hunt tallies in my study, 11 years old, and hers is the name burnt at the top of every one. She hunted with this pack from the age of 15, and she has not run once in 2 years, and not one wolf at this table has asked her why. Including me. I have been the worst of the lot of you. "Warwick," said Sybil. "He does not know what she is," said the Alpha King of Coldbrook, to a room of 60 people, with Dorothy Crane sitting 8 feet away in her good coat. "He is not cruel. He is not unkind. He simply does not know. She has been letting him not know for 2 years, and I have said nothing for 2 years, and I am done saying nothing." Silence. Sybil stood up very slowly. She did not shout. Imogen had braced for shouting. Shouting would have been survivable. Sybil put her napkin on the table and looked at her brother with an expression Imogen had seen 400 times and never once at that intensity, and said, quite pleasantly, "Thank you. Everybody can go home now." "Sybil, the 9th stands. Everything else goes." She was already moving. No hall, no 300, no feast, no quartet, no arch, no seating chart. None of the fortnight you have spent redrawing my wedding into something you could bear to sit in. 11 chairs in the West Chapel. Sybil, you are not one of the 11. She stopped in the doorway. You have stood at the front of every important room of my life since I was 6. On the 9th, you will be somewhere else. And when you come to apologize at about the 4th hour of the morning, because you always do, I want you to know in advance that I will not open the door. She stopped in the doorway. "I had it," she said. "Do you understand what you have done? I had it. It was mine for about 4 seconds, and you stood up and made it yours. And now I will never know whether I saw it or whether my brother told me." And she went. The keep emptied in 40 minutes, and Imogen ran it, because that is what a ceremony mistress is for, and because there was nothing else on earth to do. She put the Cranes in the West lodging, with a fire lit, and sat down with the household clerk to begin unmaking a wedding for 300. Riders to turn back at 5 territories, a feast to stop, a hall to strike, 11 chairs to find. Then she stood in the passage outside the kitchens, with her board against her chest. "You did that well," said Sorrel. "It is what I do." "I know. I am saying it is the 412th time, and nobody has counted." Imogen found him in the emptied hall long after everybody else had gone. 60 places, half cleared. Candles burnt to stubs and smoking, 400 cream roses standing in buckets by the far door, going nowhere. He was sitting on the edge of the low oak platform with his coat off, which she had never seen, elbows on his knees, looking at the floor. She sat down beside him. "I know," he said. "You do not, actually. I was right." "You were completely right," said Imogen. "It is the least useful thing you have ever been." He made a sound that was not a laugh. "I am the Alpha King of Coldbrook." He told it to the floor. 9 territories, 30,000 wolves. Tomorrow morning I could seal that chapel. I could have Emmett Crane on a horse to the Eastern Holdings by noon, and no wolf in 5 territories would lift a finger. And it would be lawful, and half this keep would privately think I had done the right thing. Yes, and it is worth nothing. He turned his head. His voice had gone rough at the edges, and he made no attempt to fix it, which was the first time. There is not one thing I can do with the whole of it that gets my sister to open a door. He is going to cry, said Bracken. Do something. I am aware. I do not like it. Do something. Warwick, said Imogen. He looked at her, and the entire managed apparatus of him, the height, the stillness, the granite, went out at once, the way a man's arms fail only after he has put a thing down. She would not sleep unless the door was open, he said. After, not ajar, open, all the way, so she could see the corridor. So I sat in the corridor. Every night for 2 years I sat on the flagstones outside her room, doing the accounts of a territory I did not understand, by candlelight, and when she woke up she could see me, and she went back to sleep. Imogen did not say anything. There was nothing to say, and she was not going to insult him with a sentence. I have been in that corridor for 20 years, said Warwick. I stood up once, tonight, at a supper. And then he cried, which she had not expected, and which he fought the whole way and lost, one hand pressed hard over the lower half of his face, his shoulders going once, twice, silent, furious with himself, in an empty hall at the 2nd hour of the morning. Imogen Pruitt set her writing board down on the platform beside her. Then she put her arms around the Alpha King of Coldbrook, and he came down into it like a wall going over, and she held him, and the cedar smoke came up warm off his collar, and she looked over his shoulder at 400 cream roses in buckets by the door and thought, with total clarity and no pleasure whatsoever, ah, there it is. That is what I have gone and done. Emmett Crane came to the study on the Sunday morning, which Imogen had not expected and would think about for a long time afterwards. He was not angry. That was the thing. He stood in front of the desk with his cap in his hands like a man reporting a fence down. My mother wants to know whether the wedding is off. I could not tell her because Sib has not said, and I did not think it was my place to ask. He said it perfectly evenly. You told 60 wolves I do not know what she is. I did. Well, Emmett turned his cap round once. I know she was a rider. Everybody knows she was a rider. I have never once told her not to be. No, said Warwick, you have not. Then I do not understand what I have done. And there it was, laid on the desk between them, entirely honest and entirely sincere. And Imogen stood in the doorway with a delivery schedule she was no longer pretending to read, and understood exactly why 2 years of this had made a sovereign wolf argue about napkins. Warwick stood up. Nothing anybody could write down, said Warwick. Which is why I could not say it for 2 years, and why I said it last night in the worst way available to me. That part is mine, and I am not going to dress it up. I humiliated you at your own supper, in front of your mother, in a hall where you could not answer me because of what I am. That was the act of a coward. I am sorry. It will not happen again in this life. He came round the desk and put his hand out, which no Alpha King in Coldbrook had done to a mid-ranking enforcer in living memory. And after a moment, Emmett took it. It is all right, he said, which it was not. It is not. Tell your mother she has a fire and a hot supper in the West Lodging for as long as she wants one, and that I said so. Emmett stopped at the door. If Sib does still want me on the 9th, what then? Then I will not be there, said Warwick, and you will have my sister, and I will not say one further word about any of it as long as I live. Chapter 5. Woman to Woman. He tried it his way at the 4th hour, exactly as his sister had predicted, and it failed exactly as his sister had predicted. and Imogen found him at the 5th hour sitting on the flagstones outside a shut door with his back against the wall. He had, at least, not knocked twice. "Come away," she said. "No." "Tell him the floor is cold," said Sorrel. "He is a king. Nobody has told him a floor is cold in 20 years. "Warwick." "She is awake," said Bracken. "She is on the other side of it, and she is awake, and she is not going to open it." "I know." "Good. I did not want to be the only one." "This is where I sit," said Warwick Bramhall, and Imogen sat down on the cold stone beside him, and neither of them said anything for a while, and the door did not open. At the 6th hour he said, "I could buy him. A post in the East, a stipend, a title. He would take it inside a week and believe he had earned it. And in 11 years it comes out. These things always come out at a funeral. And your sister learns that the one wolf who chose her was bought off by her brother, and she never trusts anybody again as long as she lives." He was quiet. "You have 30,000 wolves," she said. "There is exactly one who does not have to do what you say. That is the whole problem, and it is also the entire point of her." "Then what?" Imogen stood and brushed the stone dust off her coat. "Then somebody who is not her brother goes and knocks." Sybil opened the door for the ceremony mistress at the 7th hour, because the ceremony mistress still had a wedding to run in a day and a half, and a professional reason to be standing there, which Imogen had counted on and was not proud of. The room was half-packed, the white gown was on its stand. Sybil sat down on the bed and said flatly, "If he sent you, get out." "He did not send me. He is sitting on the floor of your corridor, and he will still be there at noon, and you know it." Imogen shut the door. "One question about the chapel, one thing to say afterwards." "Ask." 11 chairs, 2 rows or 1? 1. Good. Imogen wrote it down, then put the board face down on the bed, which is the thing she had done twice in 12 years. "I have run 411 weddings from the back wall," she said. "Nobody looks at the back wall. From there I have watched about 40 brides go quiet across a fortnight, and I have never said one word to any of them, because it is not my business, and I am staff, and I am paid to make the day beautiful." Sybil said nothing. "Last night Halloway asked you about the spring circuit, and you said yes. You said moon, yes, and you started a sentence, and your whole shape changed. And I was 30 feet away, and I watched a woman arrive who has not been in that hall in 2 years. Do not." And then somebody laughed and finished the sentence for you, and you looked at the tablecloth. Imogen kept her voice level. "Your brother did not see that. Your brother was already standing up. He has carried a feeling in his chest for 2 years, with no evidence and no words for it, and he wrecked your supper with it, and he was clumsy and enormous and unforgivable about it." "Yes. But he was not in the room for those 4 seconds, said Imogen. "I was. You had it before he opened his mouth. I watched you get it. It is yours. He did not give it to you, and he cannot take it off you." Sybil did not move. "One more thing, and then I will go and count chairs," said Imogen. "In August, he sat down and told you that you could stop. Any of it. At any hour. He was being strange. He was being the least strange he has been all year. He has tried 4 times in 9 months, and did not try a 5th, and that cost him more than the supper did." Imogen picked up her board. "You heard a brother who could not let go. He is that. He is also the only wolf in this keep who noticed. I would not raise it at all, except that you have spent a year deciding nobody here knows who you are, and I would like you to have the full accounts before you decide anything else." The room was very quiet. Sybil Bramhall put both hands over her face and sat like that for a long moment. "I have known for a year," she said. "Not a list. Nothing you could write down." Sybil's mouth went crooked. "Do you want to know how I stopped running?" The spring meet fell the same week as our engagement supper, and Emmett said it would look odd to ride out 4 days after. And he was right, it would have. So I did not go. Then the autumn meet was the week his father was ill, then the next spring, and by then I had missed 3, and Holloway had a new lead, and it would have been awkward to ask. She looked at the wall. Nobody stopped me. That is what I cannot make anybody understand. There is no moment. There is a reasonable man being reasonable 4 times in a row and a woman agreeing with him, and then 2 years. Her eyes were red and completely dry, which was worse. A fortnight in the spring, he told a rider I wasn't really an outdoors person, and I stood there and heard it and thought, he does not know who I am. And then I put it down. And I picked it up again about once a month for a year, and put it down again, every single time. Why? Because I am 26, said Sybil. She said it the way you say a diagnosis. Every wolf I grew up with is bonded. 2 of them twice. There are pups in this keep whose mothers I taught to ride. I go to every one of those bondings, and I am so pleased for them, honestly pleased. And then I go home. Her voice went. And he asked me. Emmett asked me. He is kind and everybody likes him, and he asked me, and I said yes in about a second and a half, and I have known for a year that I said yes to the wrong question, and I could not work out what I was supposed to do with that. Wait? For what? Until I am 30 and it is worse? Sybil. And I said it to him, said Sybil, in June. He asked whether I still wanted the things I wanted at 19, and I said everybody wants different things at 26, like a joke, and went to fetch the wine. She dragged her sleeve across her cheek. He did not hear it, and I was glad. That is the part I would like written down somewhere. I was glad. Why? Because I could not tell Warwick. She laughed, wetly, awfully. He would have burnt the keep down for me. And I could not say to him, I am lonely, and I am behind, and I am frightened I have missed it, because he would have looked at me and known he could not fix it. And I have never once in my life let that man look at a thing he could not fix. Imogen Pruitt, who had stood at 411 back walls and gone home alone from every one, sat down on the bed. I am 27, she said. I have never been in the middle of a room in my life. Sybil looked up. That is not advice, said Imogen. I have none. I am telling you I know the sum you have been doing because I do it too, and I have been doing it longer, and it does not come out. How do you stand it? Said Sybil. 411. I stopped counting what they were and started counting what they needed. Chairs, stems, hours. It works. Imogen turned her board face down on the bed. It worked for 11 years, and it stopped working about 9 days ago in this castle, and I would be grateful if you did not ask me why. 9 days ago is Monday. It is a busy week, and I have 406 items outstanding. It is Monday, said Sybil, and my brother has been carrying trays. And she laughed, one wet, disbelieving syllable that surprised them both, and put her hand flat on the coverlet, and Imogen put hers beside it. You can put the chairs in 1 row, Sybil said eventually. I will. I am not going to need them. She told Emmett herself in the west courtyard, alone. Imogen did not watch. There is a difference between a professional and a spectator, and it is about 9 feet of corridor. He left 2 days later with his mother and a great deal of dignity, and the last thing he did was stop his horse and say something to Sybil that made her laugh, which Imogen chose to find hopeful and never asked about. 400 cream roses went out to every house in the lower keep, 3 stems at a time, delivered by a florist who complained about it for the rest of her natural life, exactly as predicted, with enormous pleasure. Sybil came to the great hall at the 4th hour. Warwick was on the platform, not assessing it, just standing on it, because he had run out of places to put himself. She stopped 6 feet short of the platform, because 6 feet was as close as she could manage. I am not here to forgive you. I know. You humiliated me in front of 60 wolves and Emmett's mother, and you took the only 4 seconds of my own life I have had in 2 years. Yes. Say something. Anything I say is an argument wearing a coat, said Warwick Bramhall. You are owed an apology and not an argument. I am sorry. I have no defense, and I am not going to go looking for one. Sybil's chin came up and did not hold. 4 seconds, she said, and her voice broke straight down the middle of it. I had 4 seconds, Warwick, and they were mine. They are still yours, he said. She told me. She was closer than I was. You said the right thing in August, and I told you were being strange. You did. And you did not raise it again. For 4 months, said Warwick. I want it minuted that this was the single greatest act of my reign, and that I then destroyed the whole of it in about 9 seconds at a supper. And his sister crossed the last 6 feet at something between a walk and a collapse, and the Alpha King of Coldbrook held on to her while she cried, one hand at the back of her head, saying nothing, in the exact posture of a 17-year-old boy in a corridor. I am so far behind, Sybil said into his coat. You are 26. Everyone is. I do not care what everyone is, said Warwick. I told you in August there was no clock, and you did not hear me, so I will keep saying it. No clock. If one turns up, I will break it personally. Sybil laughed into his shoulder, which was the first good sound in that hall in 2 days. You have to let me be wrong about things, she said, for years, out loud, and not say anything. That will kill me. Yes, said Sybil, I know. That is the arrangement. Imogen found him on the platform at dusk. I am leaving in the morning, she said. He turned. There is no wedding. There is no fee either. I have struck it. Do not argue. I am not invoicing a man for a wedding I helped call off. She kept her voice level. And the Western Holdings have written. Word travels at the speed of a rider in this country, and it has reached them that the ceremony mistress talked a bride out of her own bonding, which is not what happened and is what everybody will say happened. They have released me. Politely. Warwick went very still. Do not fix it, said Imogen. If you write to the Western Holdings on my account, I will never work again as anything except a wolf the Alpha King writes letters for. I will get the next one myself. Pruitt. I have 411 of these behind me, and I am very good at them. And I am going to go and stand at the back of somebody else's most important day, which is what I do, and I have never once minded it. Pruitt. And I find that I mind it now, said Imogen Pruitt. Very much, quite suddenly, and that is a professional difficulty which I intend to solve by getting on a horse. Warwick came down off the platform. I'm going to say a thing badly, he said. I have not asked a wolf for anything I actually wanted since I was 17 years old, and I am extremely poor at it, so you will have to take it as it arrives. Alpha King, you told me, in my own kitchen, at the 2nd hour of the morning, that you leave by the side door past the pantry in the hour after the dancing starts, because that is the hour when nobody counts staff. His voice had dropped. You said it perfectly levelly. It is the worst thing anybody has said to me in 20 years, and you delivered it like a delivery schedule. Imogen stopped breathing somewhere in the middle of that. I carried a chair to your door at the 11th hour of the night for no reason on this earth. You asked what I was doing, and I did not have an answer. He stopped a foot away. I am not going to be graceful about this. I did not fold a napkin at 2 a.m. for the sake of the linen, Pruitt. I did it because you were arriving at 9. The hall was completely silent. There is no wedding, he said. No hall to run, no dancing to leave, nothing at all in this room. And I am glad of it, because I want the first time anybody asks you to stay to be a time when there is nothing else in it. He did not look away once. Stay. Not for the fortnight. Stay because I have walked round the front of this keep for a week, inventing reasons to be wherever you were, and I have run out, and I would like, once in my life, to want something out loud. Imogen Pruitt looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached down, very deliberately, and set her writing board on the edge of the platform. She had not put it down voluntarily in 11 years. She took 2 steps, put both palms flat against the front of his coat, and kissed the Alpha King of Coldbrook in the middle of his own great hall. He made a sound against her mouth, low and involuntary, the wolf arriving all at once, and his arms came round her and lifted slightly, and the world reduced itself to cedar smoke and wool and the astonishing heat of him, and somewhere off at the kitchen door a tray went down. She pulled back an inch, her forehead against his. "You are aware that I called off your sister's wedding?" "I am aware." "That will be difficult to explain to future clients." "I will write you a reference," said Warwick. "Imogen," said Bracken. Warwick went briefly, entirely still. "You have called her the clipboard for a fortnight. I am aware of what I have called her. Say it again." "No." "Say it again." Imogen. Chapter 6. The Spring Meet. Sybil Bramhall led the Western Circuit out in the spring. She did it on a gray morning with 40 riders behind her and her brother at the gate with his arms folded, saying absolutely nothing, which the household regarded as the single greatest feat of his reign. Imogen stood beside him with her coat buttoned to the throat and her board, out of pure habit, under one arm. "You have that expression," she said. "I have the expression of a man with 4 objections. The road is wet, the road is long, the road is in the west, and she is going down it." He watched his sister take the head of the line, turn in the saddle, and shout something obscene at Halloway that carried the length of the yard. "I want it minuted that I am lodging none of them." "The record has noted it," said Imogen, and did not write it down, and stood beside him at the gate until the last rider was out of sight, which took a very long time, and neither of them suggested going in. She led it again in the autumn, and has not stopped since. She comes home on the 1st of every month, eats everything in the kitchen, argues with her brother about the temperature of soup, and leaves. She is not bonded and may not bother. When the elders ask, she tells them she is 27 and extremely busy, and then looks at them until they change the subject, which she learned from Warwick, and does better than he does. There is a 4th tally on the study wall now. He has never taken any of them down. A year later, at first light, in the small West Chapel with 11 people present and no seating chart whatsoever, Imogen Pruitt bonded to the Alpha King of Coldbrook. She had checked for a seating chart. It had taken some effort. He brushed her hair back from her shoulder. His hand was not steady. That, she had learned, was the whole of him. Lethal at everything, hopeless at this. "You are certain?" he said. "I have written it down." "Pruitt." "Warwick," she said. "Bite me before I take minutes." The mark went in at the curve of her shoulder, and the world went white at the edges, and she heard herself make a sound she would not be describing to anybody, and his arms held her up while the bond came through. Warm, immediate, total, a door opening onto a fire in a building she had been standing outside her whole life. "Imogen," said Bracken quite clearly, and this time nobody argued with him. Every morning at the 8th hour, on the desk beside her writing board, there is one sheet of paper, folded once, in the king's own hand. "I object to the curtains. I object to the soup. I object to the arrangement of the chairs in the small hall, which suggests a path, which suggests a departure. No objection today. This has been difficult. Please note the effort. 1 per day. She has kept every one of them.